What foods have the most water? It's a great question, and we are quenching your thirst for knowledge today on the exam room with Dr. Neal Barnard. And welcome, my friends, to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching and downloading in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. And the topic today is indeed hydrating foods. What can you eat to quench your thirst? And how much water do you still need to drink if you're eating a lot of these hydrating foods? We've got the answers on the way with Dr. Neal Barnard. He, of course, is the author of The Power Foods Diet. So with that in mind, we are going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag today and answering your questions. If there's anything on your mind that you would like to ask Dr. Barnard about hydrating foods, go ahead, post it in the comments or in the chat. We're going to get to as many as we can. Going to be talking about the most hydrating fruits, the most hydrating vegetables, how much water you should be drinking, and does soda actually quench thirst? I don't know, but we're going to find out. And what about coffee and caffeinated beverages? We hear that they're kind of a dehydrating drink. So could that be doing more harm than good? We're going to find out. So let's go ahead and get everything started right now with the man of the hour, Mr. Hydration himself. I'm not sure if he's ever been called that, but we're starting a new trend today. Dr. Barnard, thanks for being here, my friend.
Great to be with you, Chuck.
How are things in Omaha? You have a big event there tonight, I understand.
We do. It's going to be huge. We have more than 700 people. More than 400 people already scheduled to come in. It's at the Scott Conference Center, and it's 7 o'clock tonight. And there's still room for more. So I hope people will join us.
Absolutely. So you can find out more. This is part of the Power Foods lecture series. You can find that out right now. More details on pcrm.org/powerfoods. I do believe there's a link to it in the episode notes for you. But Dr. Barnard, we'll talk a little bit more about the big event tonight, but let's talk about hydrating foods. By and large, dehydration seems to be a larger issue than a lot of us really think about, isn't it?
It is a bigger issue than a lot of people think about. And that's partly for, first of all, it is getting hotter outside. It's not your imagination. Number two, people are physically active more. You know, back when everyone was in the office all the time, people weren't getting out as much. Now people have somewhat more flexibility in their schedule. Some might be going out in the middle of the day. The middle of the day here in Washington, D.C., it could be 100 degrees. So it's a bigger issue than before. And there are people who are pushing it to the limits and sometimes getting into trouble.
So what would you say are the most hydrating foods out there? I would assume by and large, maybe fruits would be kind of at the top of the list. So that may be a good place to start. Let's go ahead and open up the doctor's mailbag right away. Take Anne's question, wondering what are the most hydrating fruits out there, Dr. Barnard?
Okay, you're on the right track. Fruits are a great way to go, but let me back up just a little bit though, because let's say you're going out. It's not a hot day. You're not sweating profusely, and you're going to go for a good brisk walk for a half hour. You don't really need to worry too much about hydration. You should have some water. You want to make sure you're not dehydrated, but it's not going to be as much of an issue for you as it will be if it's a really hot day. You're doing more extensive exertion, and particularly if you're the kind of person who sweats a lot, you're going to lose a lot of water. You're going to lose a lot of electrolytes. There, you're going to get into trouble. So that's where water alone may not quite do it. So the question about fruits, great question. The obvious answer, of course, is fruit juices. Fruit juices have a lot of water and some nutrients in them as well. And this could be something like typical citrus fruits like OJ or grapefruit juice, but you can do something like apple juice or cranberry juice. There are blueberry juices, grape juices. And the reason people are looking there is because the polyphenols in the blueberry and the grape juice are getting known for not just being part of a hydrating beverage, but they have health benefits of their own, both cognitively and other things. So the juice is top of the list. After that, though, let's think about the fruits themselves. The berry group, each berry is small, but you put them together. Strawberries have a lot of water packed into them, and that's true with their cousins, the blueberries and raspberries and blackberries. Don't forget about the obvious choices, like an apple, an orange, a grapefruit. There's a lot of water inside, and the entire melon group, the cantaloupes, the watermelons, very, very water rich. Now, let me contrast this. A banana. Not a lot of water, very different from, say, an apple or watermelon. But the banana, while it's not really hydrating, is good in other ways. So don't neglect them. Everybody knows bananas have potassium. Are you losing potassium with exercise? You sure are. So don't forget the fruits, even if they're not the most hydrating ones.
JW in the chat already is like, well, wait a minute. I hear you talking about fruit juices. This was at 12:07, but fruit juice is full of sugar, though. Should that be sounding the alarm? Is that one of those things that's okay in moderation, in your opinion?
Fruit juices contain the natural fruits, the natural sugars that the fruits pack, and that's good for you. What is your body using when you're exercising? Your body is burning up sugar, glucose, and replenishing it is exactly what your body needs. So I wouldn't shy away from it. That's part of the benefit.
But okay, so then you go down the juice aisle in the store, though, you see limitless options, it seems. When you're flipping things over and looking at the ingredients label, what are some of the things that you really key in on for yourself to make sure you're picking a good, healthy option?
Okay, the juices are good, and frankly, if it's just juice, that's going to be your best option. And you will find a lot of them that are not just juice. There will be sugar added, which you don't really need. That said, I don't think the added sugars are as terrible as some people will make them out to be. There are some people who imagine that a sugared beverage is really, really, really a problem, particularly for athletes who are consuming a lot of calories minute by minute. I don't think it's really a big deal for them at all. But there are all kinds of products out there that are also caffeinated and have a lot of other things in them that you just really do not need.
I'm glad you brought up athletes. We're going to circle back to them in just a little bit. Tom has a question about foods for after working out, but we talked about fruits. Now let's talk about vegetables going hand in hand. Eloise, natural follow-up. I think you know where we're going here. What are the vegetables that have the most water content, Dr. Barnard?
Okay, let's not forget some of the sort of mundane ones that you may not really think about. Take a sweet potato. Yes, it's orange. Yes, it's got beta carotene in it, but it's got a lot of water in there and has a lot of hydrating potential. Squash. In fact, the whole squash group, that's the summer squash, like zucchini, the winter squash, like butternut squash, very good for hydration. And they've got the two elements too. Lots of water to hydrate you, lots of beta carotene or other antioxidants to nourish you. That's great. Don't forget beets. Americans don't really know too much about beets. Beets are great in many ways, as you've actually covered here on the exam room before, but one of their properties is they're very good for hydration. Asparagus is a very good one, and all their green vegetable cousins are good. Why? Because you cook them. In the process of being boiled, they're absorbing water, and they give it back to you with a lot of good nutrition too. Kind of where we started, you need the water to hydrate you. But you need more than that. You need the electrolytes that you're also losing. You're losing some potassium, you're losing some magnesium, you're losing some sodium, obviously. And the vegetables and fruits will bring some of those back to you in addition to hydrating you.
Let me ask you about potatoes. I would almost kind of think that you could make an argument that they would fall into the same category as the banana in that maybe they're not the most hydrating food, but certainly they're going to have those other nutrients that you were just talking about that your body might need. Bit Finesse at 1148 is wondering specifically about sweet potatoes. Would you still consider that to be a somewhat hydrating food, a good option?
An excellent option. It's near the top of the list for the very reasons that you gave. It does contain water and plenty of it, to many people's surprise, along with other good nutrients as well.
All right, they're talking about steaming them in particular. I would imagine that the cooking method would matter greatly. You know, steaming versus fried, or even baked versus fried. In
Oh
this
man,
case.
Chuck, you touched on such an important thing because exactly what you said is right. How do people have their potatoes? They have them as potato chips. That's not going to hydrate you at all. French fries, it's over. No, no, no. The water's gone. So boiled, and there are many other ways that people do them. They'll boil them, they'll mash them other ways, and those are fine.
And you look at Bit Finesse's photo there from YouTube. He looks like an athlete himself, a workout guy. But this question comes to us from Tom, wondering what foods you might recommend after a workout that I guess in this case could serve dual purpose. One, rehydrating the body, but two, also replenishing it with a lot of those nutrients and electrolytes you were talking about.
Okay, great question. Hopefully, our hydration strategy began before the workout, because that's going to influence how much you need after the workout. So let's say you know you're going to go out for, as I said, just a short walk. Doesn't really matter too much. But if you're going to do more than that, you're going to go out for a half-hour run, an hour run. Don't just go out dry. Before you run, keep in mind that water has to go from your stomach into your bloodstream and finally then into your vasculature. That takes a little time. So have a couple of 8-ounce glasses of water before you head out. That's good. You also do have electrolytes in your system. You're fine for the moment. And then as you go, I would say maybe every half hour, it differs for different people, but every half hour or so of vigorous activity, you should have about a cup of liquid. And for a short run, that can be just plain water, is perfectly fine. Afterwards, here's what you should not do. You don't say, what a fantastic race. I feel great. Let's go in the clubhouse and have a good beer. Here's what will happen. You're going to get hydrated. You're going to get water, but you're going to get a big diuretic effect from that beer, which you do not want, and you're going to get an exaggerated alcohol effect. You don't want that. Okay, what's a better choice? Cup of coffee, some tea? The caffeine is a diuretic too. Now, it has water, so you're going to get hydrated, but you're going to pee a fair amount of it out. So this doesn't mean you can't have a caffeinated beverage, but it's kind of 50-50 if it helps or hurts. Better choices. Water's important. Juices are still fine. The Gatorades of the world, they're A-okay. Now, they're controversial. Some of them are sugared. And some people are quite concerned about that. But as I mentioned earlier, I am less concerned about that for people who are using them as an athletic restorative, as opposed to a person who's having it at the movies or something like that. So Gatorade is perfectly fine. Some people will take water and they'll take a little electrolyte packet that's a mixture. It gives you some sodium, gives you some potassium, gives you some magnesium and some other things. Those are perfectly fine. Not necessary for a short run on a cool day, but a darn good idea for a long run on a hot day.
Yeah, what's your opinion on these new lines of, I guess, fit waters? I know Gatorade specifically has one coming out that just looks like it's got a lot of sodium poured into it in addition to the water. So basically, they're selling salt water and calling it fit water is kind of my understanding, which is an interesting concept. But nonetheless, it's out there, Gatorade water, if anybody wants to Google it and see for yourself. It's an interesting thing. And I think that the average person might see that on store shelves and think, oh, this is a healthy thing. Let me pick that up for myself, as they also put potato chips and French fries and those salty foods we were talking about into their shopping cart as well. I would imagine that person much different from the one who's coming out of the gym and may also have a bottle of that in their hand.
Gatorade has gotten sort of mixed reviews over time, and some people beat Gatorade up for some of the reasons you gave. Are they throwing unnecessary things into a beverage? Are they? Is it expensive water with a few things added? They have some products that have sugar in them, and some people say it's more than needed. But I want to stick up for Gatorade for a minute. And by the way, we at the Physicians Committee do not take money from any food manufacturer, so I'm not speaking with any kind of bias at all. And I'm not a big Gatorade user in particular, but I want to stick up for them for this reason. When you are dehydrating in the course of your run, your sweat is not just water. The electrolytes are pouring out, and one of the big ones is sodium. And so, okay, I'm going to sit down after my exercise, and my plant-based menu of whole foods has almost no sodium in it. The sodium-rich foods are kind of few and far between. And so our friends at Gatorade are saying, okay, let's put some sodium in there because you're going to need it. And if you don't have it, you're going to become what we call hyponatremic, meaning you don't have enough sodium. And if your electrolytes are not in good shape, you're going to have all kinds of issues. You're going to have headaches. You're going to have muscle cramps. You're going to feel crummy. You're going to be nauseated. You're going to have an upset stomach. So all these things can occur. So I frankly think that their products are not bad. Now, could you say, well, they got more sodium than you need? Couldn't you get it from food? Do they have more sugar than you need? Couldn't you get that or just skip it? Yeah, those are all legitimate points. But I think that their product for a person who's really vigorously exercising is doing some good.
And 100%. I mean, that was what it was originally developed for on the campus of the University of Florida,
Right.
which their athletes
Exactly.
are the Gators, and that's why it's called Gatorade. Let's take a question. Speaking of athletes, from Trey, who's watching us right now, sent this question in at 12:13. Wondering if you can give a little bit more clarity on some of the things we're talking about. Overall, are you saying, Dr. Barnard, that we can drink less water if we eat more fruits and vegetables that are hydrating foods? He says that he works out a lot. That's why he's asking.
Yes, the answer is yes. And now the old naive idea, and you'll still see this said all the time, is you need 64 ounces of water per day. You should have 8-ounce servings of water every day. And there are people who did that. And so they would have their water glass, they would drink and drink and drink, and you can't get out of the bathroom because you're taking in such a huge amount of fluid. Your body may have that kind of fluid requirement, but it does not all have to come from water. You start your day with a bowl of oatmeal. How did you make the oatmeal? 1 part oatmeal, 2 parts water. That water counts. You don't have to have a glass of water in addition to it. So if you have some green vegetables or something like that, or you have a bowl of cereal, or let's say you cook beans. You cook beans in water. The water gets into the beans, you eat them. So you're getting water from food and you're getting a substantial amount of it. Now, if your idea of a breakfast is steak and eggs, well, there's not a lot of water in there. That's not really healthy food. But if you are eating plant foods that are particularly hydrated in and of themselves, the idea of needing that much additional water in beverages, you really don't need.
Going back to oatmeal, same kind of thought would apply then to things like grits or rice,
Oh,
other
yeah.
foods that are boiled. Same type of deal.
Absolutely. And of course, the obvious one here is soup. So if you're having soup, you don't need to have a big bowl of soup and a glass of water. The foods bring it to you, and you could get through a day without having any added water at all, depending on the foods that you're consuming. Now, for most people, that's not enough to hydrate them, and they do need to add some water in addition to it. But those things are fine. So perfectly okay.
All right. And let me also ask about leafy greens specifically. I know that there's a big difference, it seems, in the water content when I bite down into something like romaine lettuce versus a piece of spinach. Would you say, by and large, that the romaine is like one of the most hydrating leafy greens out there?
Yeah, it is. And of course, it depends on how it's cooked, because there are people who will make their crispy kale and things like that, where they're specifically removing the water to give it crunch. So it depends on how it's made. But yeah, and it's a good source of water and a darn good source of overall nutrition, because the calcium is in there. That's an electrolyte as well. There's potassium in there. There's a lot of beta carotene. You can't see it in the green vegetable because the green chlorophyll hides it, but it's there, and you really can't do better than that.
All right. And last question on sugar sweetened beverages comes to us from Elizabeth. We were talking about Gatorade, but she's wondering specifically about soda and whether or not that could be considered an actual thirst quencher. Would the fluid that's found in something like a Coke actually count toward the amount of fluid that the person needs in a day?
Yes, it does. Now, people nowadays want to beat up on Coca-Cola and sodas, and for good reason, because it's a lot of junk that you don't need, and that's all true. However, what is it? A Coca-Cola is some caramel color and some caffeine and some carbonation thrown into some water. And the water is hydrating. Now, there is some caffeine in there. The amount of caffeine in a Coke is a little bit less than a sort of a medium-sized cup of coffee. So it's significant, and it does cause some diuresis as well. But overall, it is a hydrating beverage, and that's true for all of the sodas. And for a person who is physically active, the added sugar that's there is going to get burned off. They're going to use it. They're going to use it for energy. Now, Chuck, there's a huge kind of controversy here, and some gaps in scientific knowledge here that haven't really been filled in. And it goes like this. If you look at large population groups, people who have a lot of sugary sodas do weigh more than other people. They do. And they're going to be gaining weight more than other people. However, when you look at people who have sodas that are not sugar sweetened, they're having artificially sweetened ones, they gain weight also. Their risk of diabetes increases also. So when that was found, that the sodas were associated with weight gain and they were associated with high risk of diabetes, whether it was a sugary beverage or not, led people to realize that there seems to be a confounder here. The confounder is the soda comes with a cheeseburger. So it wasn't necessarily the soda doing that. After all, the sugar, as bad as it may be, is only 4 calories in a gram, but it comes with the foods that really pack a lot of fat and a lot of calories in. So that may be the problem. So once again, don't misunderstand. I don't want to say that sodas are health food. They're not. But the idea that it's really responsible for the obesity we're seeing in America, or that it's a terrible hydration food, I think that's really going way too far. By the way, if you don't mind, Chuck, can I add a couple of things that I just want to mention?
100%.
Chuck, I was mentioning earlier that salt is kind of rare in our diet, and that's a problem. A person who sweats a lot, you're losing water, you're losing salt with it, and think, what am I going to have instead? So I would suggest not reaching for the potato chips and stuff like that, because you're getting a lot of fried junk. But if you have some nuts with a little salt added, if you have some olives that have a little salt added, or you had some beans out of a can and the salt was added, this is sort of the one time where sodium sheds its problematic image and becomes a good thing. Your average American is getting too much sodium, but a lot of athletes who are really overdoing it, or well, not overdoing it, but very, very vigorous, they can be missing sodium and they need to replace it. Those are a couple easy ways to do it.
Let's talk about another juice that we have not yet touched on. We've talked about soda and Gatorade and even fruit juices, but we haven't talked about vegetable juice. Great question from Joan in the chat room at 1217, wondering about V8. She's watching on Facebook today. Is V8 something that you would consider to be a good, healthy, hydrating option, Dr. Barnard?
Sure, it's terrific. Now, V8 is a little bit different. It's V8, as in 8 vegetables that go into it, but the big one is the tomato is in there. Tomato brings you lycopene, but there are others added to that can of V8 that you're having. Perfectly fine. It's a good choice. Or if you just want to take some carrots. Yes, we're always saying eat the whole vegetable. That's better than juicing, but there is nothing wrong with throwing some carrots into your juicer. And you can add other things like celery to them. They're hydrating, and they're really good sources of electrolytes too.
All right. And going back to, I guess, energy drinks in particular, not Gatorade, but maybe an energy drink that's got caffeine added to it. Eat Plants, Pet Cats. That's a fun name. Eat Plants, Pet Cats, 1216. What is your opinion on drinks such as Monster, or maybe even something like Red Bull?
Well, may I say Red Bull is a very generous sports sponsor. Are they not?
They are. They are indeed.
They are eager in capturing the entire sports market, no matter what sport you even want to look at, I got to say. Well, here we're getting to a whole other world, because first of all, yes, it's a liquid base. It's hydrating on that basis. Yes, it's sold at sports events. Some of them are caffeinated, but they add other things too. Taurine, Taurine, is a big addition that's been controversial. People have been concerned about its health effects. So far, it's getting mostly a not guilty verdict, but stay tuned. And there are other additives as well. Best guess from this vantage point is that it's going to shake out about like coffee. In other words, some good, some bad, probably not a disaster.
Let's switch back to soda for a second. I think that we've opened up a little bit of a can of worms with that. Carroll at 1223. Would a Diet Coke be preferred over a regular Coke? I think that that's going beyond just the hydration question here. We might be talking about the types of sweeteners and other ingredients here.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think there's any demonstrable benefit from Diet Cokes or diet soda in general. And I don't mean to say that just because there are concerns about the safety of artificial sweeteners. And by the way, there are. So our friends at the Cleveland Clinic have been looking at erythritol and some other sweeteners that are used in a lot of beverages, including energy drinks, and they're finding cardiovascular risk associated with them. Stay tuned. We got to see where that ends up. But bottom line, when people have a soda, they do not get a better health outcome by choosing an artificially sugared soda compared to the sugared variety. That said, what your body's real need is water. So you get a bottle of water, and that's what 99% of people are actually really, really needing the most. But I think that part of the reason that people are beating up on sugar, and again, it's sugar beverage is not health food, but a lot of times people want to point the finger of blame at it. so that there is no finger blame being pointed at their fried chicken or their cheeseburger or other foods that are a much bigger contribution to health problems.
Hey, you want to talk about a healthy option here? How about this recipe from Gina right now, who's watching us on YouTube? She says, fill a blender with watermelon and add the juice of 1 lime. She says it makes a great drink. And just thinking about that flavor makes me hard to argue with her. I mean, I think that sounds great on a hot day like this.
Yeah, in fact, you'll see if you look on athletic websites, you'll see a lot of recipes, hydration recipes. And the 2 ingredients you mentioned are very high on the list that people like to use, and for exactly the reasons that you mentioned. They're very tasty. I mean, it's a great thing after your run to celebrate with a nice tasty drink like that, and there's nothing in it that's bad. And the electrolytes are gonna say hello to you as well.
Steve's watching on Facebook right now. He says he's coming out to the event tonight, 7 o'clock at the Scott Center, I do believe is where you're going to be speaking. So that's awesome. I'm glad that you're going to be coming out tonight, Steve. And he's also saying this is interesting. Again, not necessarily on hydration, but talking about soda. He says any kind of soda really kind of triggers me to reach for junk food. That's an interesting conversation. And hearing that from him, Dr. Barnard, that does not surprise me in the least.
You know, you're putting your finger on a really, really important thing. And one of the things that we neglect in the world of nutrition guidance is the value of forgetting. What I mean is, let's say I got hooked on fast food and sodas, and I'm having them less often, but still once in a while. If you just don't have it at all, none of those things that trigger that kind of junk food desire, your brain says, well, I haven't used this file folder in a little while. I'm just going to set it aside. Your brain is forgetting that fast food addiction that is really common, I have to say. And that forgetting is a great thing. It's a really cool thing. Smokers use it. If I haven't had a cigarette in a month, I crave it less than if I had a cigarette yesterday at the same time. So what I'm arguing against is moderation. Instead of moderating your intake of something you're trying to get away from, just set it aside, let yourself forget it. Don't trigger it again. That said, if it's not a problem for you and you're having a soda every 3 months on somebody's birthday, who cares? That's not a big deal. But if it's something that's really got you in its clutches, to be able to set it aside and not keep triggering it and let your brain just kind of forget it, that's a good way to be.
Take it from a guy that's experienced that struggle. What you just said, my friend, is spot on. Question from Video 1000 Nights at 12:16, going back to the hydration conversation. What are your thoughts on the impact of hydration or dehydration on atherosclerosis, Dr. Barnard? Is there a connection there?
Great question. Let's see. Let's try to see if we can piece that together. If a person is dehydrated, the typical things that you're going to see is their urine is really dark because their kidneys are closing down. They're nauseated, they're headachy, they feel out of sorts. If they mistake that for meaning they need more nourishment, and unfortunately, the poison that a lot of people go to after the gym is they think they need a lot of meat and they need a lot of cholesterol and fat and they need animal protein to build their muscles up. That's a big wrong turn, and that is going to push them toward cardiovascular disease. If instead they realize that what their body needed was not more protein or something like that, what they just really needed was better hydration, they're going to stay on a better path. I don't think that the typical electrolyte disturbances are going to cause atherosclerosis to go forward, but what they will do, of course, if they go to an extreme, is you're going to have heart rhythm problems. Your heart, like every other muscle in your body, uses electrolytes as its means of communication from one cell to the next. If you don't have electrolytes, you don't have a pulse, and so being able to hydrate is important for the heart in that reason. But whether it would actually drive atherosclerosis directly, I would be very surprised.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Before I do the wrap up for the audio version of the podcast that will come out tomorrow, by the way, subscribe on Spotify, Apple, wherever it is that you get your shows. I'll see if I can find anything just by the by. I haven't heard of anything, but if I do, I'll throw that in the wrap up as well. So stay tuned, my friends. A couple of more quick ones before we wrap with a really important question and touch on an aspect of this that we have not yet. I want to say hi to Gabrielle, who has another recipe, really simple one that anybody can do. Great summertime snack that is super easy. Just pop some grapes in the freezer. Have frozen grapes as a snack. That's a one seed right there, my friend. And Karina says that she's feeling thirsty with all of this talk and now craving plums. That is one that has not come up yet today, but I would imagine that's another one of those ultra hydrating fruits that we could be turning to, Dr. Barnard.
It is. It's one of the things that a lot of runners will use, and they're terrific. By the way, that gives me a chance to say what is not so helpful. Dried fruits are good. You know, they last in your luggage for a good long time. Not hydrating. Okay, so the plum, not the prune.
The plum, not the prune. That's a bumper sticker
You
or a t-shirt.
you may quote me there.
The plum, not the prune. All right, and let's wrap up with the question from Stephen, who wrote a really nice email and was really right in pointing out that July 21st of this year was reportedly the hottest single day ever recorded on Earth. We're talking about worldwide, not just one location, but the hottest single day on average worldwide since since they began keeping records on these things. And so Stephen is wondering, since we're talking about all of these hydrating foods, Dr. Barnard, and a lot of them happen to be plant-based, could you talk about the association between a plant-based diet and slowing climate change?
So important. Yeah, if July 21st was the hottest day of the year, quick prediction, it's not going to be the last time that record was broken this year. I predict that within the same calendar year, in the next probably 30 days or so, we're going to see that record broken again. And when we look at 2025, same story. It's just going to continue here because, if anything, the predictions have been a little bit conservative, and we're seeing they're being exceeded with regard to the temperature change, which is a real problem. So how does a plant-based diet help? We have in the United States approaching 100 million cows. I'm talking about dairies and cattle raised for beef. Each one of them is as big as a sofa, and they are belching methane. When the cow eats corn or grass or whatever the cow eats, it goes into the rumen, the first chamber of the four chambers in the cow's stomach. It stays in the rumen for about 48 hours. It's fermenting, and all that time it's producing methane, which is a much more potent greenhouse gas compared to carbon dioxide. So it's right to condemn transportation and other contributors to greenhouse gas production. But the fact that you've got methane belching furnaces, we call cows, all across the United States, if you take their whole population of cows, you put them on one side of the scale, put the human population on the other side of the scale, they outweigh us. And they are belching methane constantly. It's a significant contributor to climate change, not to mention all the other environmental degradation that comes from having to raise all that corn, all that soybeans, not for human consumption, but just to feed the animals. And so all the fertilizer, all the pesticides, and all the irrigation used for those feed grains have no benefit for human health at all. So, as they have often said, if you're not a vegan, you're not an environmentalist. For many people, that sounds harsh, but it's true. And the difference is just whether people have learned how the dots connect or not. And the good news is that once people do learn, they're able to put it to work. And my prediction is that we're not going to win this game with the environment. I think things are going to continue to get worse simply because people are too slow to act. But we do have a chance if we get the word out to enough people and people take enough action for themselves and for their families. We do have a chance to turn this around.
You know, that's got a sting to make that kind of admission or prediction there that you don't think that we're going to win this particular battle with the environment. So many times, you know, we try to paint things in as positive of light as possible, but in this case, things are looking awfully dire here, Dr. Barnard.
We can win it. We have all the technology we need. These are things we can do. It's simply a question of human will. And because all the countless generations we've been on this earth, our preoccupation, the preoccupation of our species, has been sort of a tribal survival, where people want their own family to survive or their own group to survive, and they're willing to sacrifice parts of the environment and so forth, and not think big picture. It's sort of not in our nature to preserve our fellow human beings, let alone the rest of the planet. Okay, so let me take my antidepressants and say something a little bit more optimistic, which is, as I said, we do have the technology. We can change this. And the good news is that you do see the change right in front of your very eyes. You go into the grocery store. Look in the dairy case. It used to be a dairy case, and every product in there came out of the udder of a belching cow. Well, now the dairy case has almond milk in it, and it's got soy milk, and it has rice milk, it has hemp milk, and all these others that do not come from cattle and are environmentally much better for us. So don't get me wrong. We are seeing signs of change. We are hearing many people who are making changes in their own lives, and that's good. But we should not assume for 1 second that we've got this battle licked. We don't. It's something where we need much more activity from a much larger group of people. And of course, that's what our work is here at the Physicians Committee, is to spread the word about what a healthy diet can do. Yes, for your health. Yes, for all the animals who will cheerlead for you not eating them, but also for the planet that we share with them.
So important on so many levels, and so much more that we could get into with that. But we're kind of running out of time today. So let's put a pin in that and circle back to it at a later date. I will say I'm very much looking forward to sitting down with you again next week, because there is a lot of new research coming out that I'm chomping at the bit to talk about. And of course, tonight, once again, if you're watching this live or anytime before 7 p.m. Central Time in Omaha, you'll be at the Scott Conference Center. How's the Power Foods lecture series been going, Dr. Barnard? You having a lot of fun out there on the road?
It has been wonderful. We've had huge crowds everywhere we go, and it's great. I'm in Omaha, as you said, tonight at the Scott Conference Center. And by the way, on Saturday, I'll be in Peoria for all my friends in Illinois. I hope you'll get a chance to come by and see. And then Monday, the 29th, I'll be in Baltimore. So we're seeing lots of good friends everywhere we are.
And we haven't really talked about this yet on the show, but I know that it went out in our Exam Room VIP newsletter here. By the way, you can become a VIP for free at pcrm.org/examroomvip. Sign up and get the monthly newsletter. And tipped off to little perks like this, we're going to be coming to New York on October 5th and doing a Power Foods Live podcast up there.
It is going to be so fun, Chuck. When you and I have done a number of programs where we're talking together about what people can do for their own health, and it's so marvelous to meet with people both before and after and hear how they've been inspired, frankly, by you, Chuck, and by all of the great news that you've been bringing to people that they can put to work. And the event in New York, I think, is going to be a blast. We'll have copies of the Power Foods Diet there. I hope people will check it out if they haven't already picked up their copy of the Power Foods Diet on Amazon or somewhere else. And we're going to have fun.
And oh, by the way, I mean, you want to talk about more live shows? I mean, we're all over the place. Tomorrow night, July 25th, I'm going to be doing a live episode of the show with Dr. Brad Moore out at one of my favorite restaurants in the entire world, Green Fair in Reston, Virginia. That is absolutely free to attend, 7 o'clock start time, but I highly recommend coming out early, getting yourself a nice dinner. Now, you're going to have to pay for that. I'm not kidding you about that, but it's really good. Completely SOS free. No salt, oil, or sugar in this. If you really want to be super healthy with your diet, this is the place to be. 100% organic. And when you go, just make sure that you order the baked tofu with quinoa. And I'm telling you what, right now, your taste buds are going to thank you. Your taste buds are definitely going to thank you, and you're going to come back for more. No doubt about it. So the live show, absolutely free, 7 o'clock start time tomorrow at Green Fair. Come out early, mix and mingle with the other exam rooms, get yourself a little dinner beforehand, and have a grand old time. And Dr. Barnard, after that, I mean, golly, how many more shows can we do? Live events can we do? August 15th through the 17th. Big time stuff cracking. The 3 hottest and healthiest days on the nutrition calendar. The International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, once again back this year at the Grand Hyatt in Washington, D.C. Really pumped for our headliner this year, Dr. Dean Ornish, and his groundbreaking Alzheimer's research, Dr. Barnard. This is a great get.
Yeah, that's going to start us off. It's going to be so important, and actually, we're dedicating the whole first day to foods, lifestyle, and brain health. The takeaways are just huge.
Absolutely. Dr. Alan Desmond will be there. Of course, Dr. Barnard, myself, we're going to be there. Dr. Gemma Newman, Dr. Christopher Gardner, Dr. Christy Funk, and countless others. You can see a full list of who will be speaking this year at pcrm.org/ICNM. Seats still available, so we do hope to see you there. We're going to be taping episodes of the show all throughout as well. Can't wait for that one, Dr. Barnard. But I know you gotta go. You gotta get ready for your big event tonight, my friend. So I appreciate you taking a little time for us today.
Chuck, as always, it's great talking with you.
Pleasure is all mine, my friend. And also want to say thank you to the crew behind the scenes for making the magic happen. Thank you, guys. And to you, exam roomies, thanks for raising your health IQ once again with us as we explored hydrating foods. Really important topic today, especially on a hot summer's day like this. And for everybody here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We will talk to you again very soon. But until then, keep it plant-based.